Yeah, with that, I think we can get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are in the world. And welcome back to the Thursday Talks on DME for Peace. This is our first Thursday Talk of 2022, and maybe it's our last under the DME for Peace banner. Yeah, big changes are coming. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jack Farrell, and I am the Manager for Partnerships and Strategic Innovation at Search for Common Ground. I'm joining you today from London, and I'm going to be your host. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nishandeny Ratnam, Senior Project Manager at Search for Common Ground, and Purna Chowdhury, Senior Program Manager at the Grameen Foundation, both of whom work on the Women and Girls Empowered Sri Lanka Initiative, for a discussion on advancing women and girls' empowerment in fragile contexts. So when I refer to WAGE throughout the webinar, I'm talking about women and girls empowered. So just a note, if you have a question during today's discussion, you can write it on the question chat function of your GoToWebinar dashboard, and we will make sure to address it during today's session. So I'm going to start off with a welcome to our guests, Nisha and Purna. It is my pleasure to have you on the Thursday Talks. I just wondered, could you start off by introducing yourself to today's audience?
Sure, it's a pleasure, Jack, to join the webinar. This is Nishandeny Ratnam from Sri Lanka. So at the moment, I am the Senior Project Manager at Search Sri Lanka, managing several projects on women empowerment. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am Purna Chowdhury, and I currently work as the Senior Program Manager and Gender Lead at Grameen Foundation, India. And it is a complete pleasure for me to join this webinar as well. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, Nisha and Purna, it's my delight to facilitate this discussion. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the WAGE project and how you've implemented it in Sri Lanka. And maybe, Nisha, we can start with you.
Sure. So the WAGE project in Sri Lanka, the WAGE Initiative in Sri Lanka is roughly a 2-year project, and we have it in selected districts. That we have it in Kurunegala, Ampara, and Jaffna districts. So the selection of these locations are also with the justification of the post-conflict challenges these districts face, and also the diverse democratic, the demographic representation, and considering certain vulnerabilities that exist in these districts. And we implement this project with 3 district partners who work in these districts. And the main beneficiaries are elected women at the local authorities. So in Sri Lanka, in the political structure, we have 3 structures, that is the parliament at the national level, and at the provincial level, it's the provincial council, and the local authorities are the governing bodies at the local or the community level. So whoever is elected at these local authorities, those women leaders, and also leaders from the civil society organizations, and also we have these women economic leaders. So they are our main beneficiaries from these 3 districts. And the theory of change for the project, if I am to briefly explain, is around WPS agenda. That is to say that the women, peace and security agenda. So the theory of change is to assume that if these women leaders are given opportunities and skills related to collaboration, networking, and building relationships, and also to identify common challenges and goals related to WPS agenda, they're in a better position to work towards with regard to women, peace and security. And the second assumption is also about if women participation in peace and reconciliation is fostered at a community level, they are in a better position to advance formal and informal mechanisms to address any barriers that is related to the women, peace and security agenda. And if I am to explain a little bit about the project structure, is also we have main three components to say. The first is the capacity building. So we have a lot of trainings, awareness programs, and then we have these mechanisms created. That is to say, enabling these women to use whatever the knowledge they gain from this capacity building element to use it or to put it in practice. We have created some structures or mechanisms within these districts. And then finally, like the actual rollout of the activities for them to use their knowledge and the network and the resources got through this project in action plans, so that the community or the districts can also benefit, and there could be better improvements in the women, peace and security agenda. So that is in a nutshell about the Wage Sri Lanka initiative. Purna, please feel free to add more with a more focus on maybe the economic empowerment, which was added to the program later.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Nisha, I think you've covered pretty much everything of what we are doing under the Wage Sri Lanka initiative. Yes, that, it has very structured three parts, which is around capacity development of women leaders, where we are taking them through training of trainers on topics related to financial literacy or business skills, women's economic empowerment topics, and even topics related to WPS and gender-based violence. And we have also, we also have spent time in understanding and assessing the challenges and needs of women related to their peace and reconciliation processes and their economic empowerment in the target communities through very robust rapid needs assessment and a market analysis that we have conducted at the very outset of this project, especially when we had decided to integrate the women's economic empowerment aspect of the project. And the tools that we have created, around the mechanisms that Nisha was talking about is, creating these district level and community level will clubs that we call, and these are typically, network groups of women leaders. I think we can elaborate on those later when we get a chance to. And, establishing these network groups at both tiers, then conducting local dialogues, establishing multi-stakeholder working groups, and also very, very strategically identifying local financial service providers and business service providers and business actors, conducting linkage workshops, connecting these service providers with the larger target communities, and especially in these three identified districts of Sri Lanka. And all of those, the knowledge, skills, and the these processes that are, and the mechanisms that are established within the community, that's going to then translate into these action projects, as we call it under the project. These would be collaborative action projects that the women leaders would be undertaking on themes related to women's peace and security, women's economic empowerment, and even gender-based violence. And parallelly, we are also going to identify and collaborate with appropriate financial service providers for piloting woman-friendly financial delivery channels. So these are some of those, the integrated aspects of WPS and we within this wage.
I think that this has been really helpful, Nisha and Purna, for understanding the work that you're actually doing. But one of the questions we've gotten from an audience member, Ramio Ruduragi, and Ramio, I'm so sorry if I butchered your name, but Ramio has written that this has raised my interest to understand what the women, peace and security challenges are in the context of Sri Lanka. Could you please provide a brief explainer of the Sri Lankan women, peace and security context?
Sure. Let me take that question. So Sri Lanka had this 30-year old like ethnic conflict and a war, active war, which ended in 2009. So especially in this, now we have selected these locations in Jaffna and Ampara, which had this active war going on. So that created a lot of challenges to women. That there was no enough representation of women in the whole peace process or even in the war. And this militarization and like a lot of lives were lost. So there is a lot of women-headed households were created. So the livelihood was a huge issue, security issues for women, and gender-based violence. When women go to access services in the public sector or any other sector, there are issues related to how this insecurity of women are exploited or abused. So there are so many issues related to women, peace and security issues in Sri Lanka, which we can go for a separate webinar, of course, but this is in a nutshell. Yes.
That is very helpful, Nisha. So building on the work that you're doing in the Sri Lankan context, you both mentioned that the wage initiatives aim to integrate both the women, peace and security, as well as the women economic empowerment agendas, which seems unusual for a typical, international development project. So how would you explain that integration, and how have you implemented this integrated approach to date?
Sure.
And
Let me start.
I take that. Okay,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Sure. Go ahead, Purna. You are the
No
expert.
problem. No problem. Okay, so initially, Jack, when we started work, conceptualizing this program, when we started, this Wait Sri Lanka initiative focused on empowering women political leaders and women leaders from civil society organization, and so that they are able to challenge and address these the women's conflict related and post conflict related needs, which also included gender-based violence, as Nisha highlighted. And but in due course, it was realized that women's economic empowerment is a key enabler for women's holistic empowerment, and in terms of improving their decision-making abilities, their self-worth, their right to have and determine choices, right to have access to opportunities, resources, services, and so also right to control their own lives within the households and even outside of home. So once this was identified, this realization led to the integration of women's economic empowerment within the existing program of wages, WPS, and GBV agenda as well. So if I can highlight, how do we implement, and how have we implemented this integrated approach? For example, through our, as I said, mentioned about the rapid needs assessment and the market analysis that we had conducted. And through those analysis, it was highlighted that women in Sri Lanka cannot access formal financial services and products. They are unable to register their businesses or join some, agricultural cooperatives, unless the formal and customary laws that favor men is changed. For example, these women don't have access or ownership to land. They lack collaterals, which make women ineligible for loans, etc. So these are very typical challenges to women's economic empowerment. But this issue can be tackled through advocacy and policy influencing and changes in policy. And that highlights why women's political representation is so very important for women's economic advancement. And that is where we see integration within this project. So this was just an example to quote from the project itself. Nisha, if you want to add something to that, please feel free to do so.
Sure. Just to add, in the sense, we are so glad that we revised the program to add this women economic empowerment component, that we see many changes in the project, and we see that the project has transformed the lives of many people, and we see how the network created among these different categories of women leaders. We have elected women, we have CSO leaders, and the women economic leaders, and when they are connected, and how that network is creating them more opportunities to access more resources. We see that in the project, and also we see there's more awareness about gender-based violence, women economic empowerment, and even the women peace and security agenda among the different different sectors, and maybe the service providers, beneficiaries, and multiple stakeholders. So just to add in that perspective.
So
just one more point.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead, Purna.
Okay, so just to kind of add to the network that Nisha is talking about. So as we mentioned, that we have created these network groups at the district level and even at the community level, and these network groups are called will clubs. So the district level will clubs that have been formed with women political leaders and the women CSO leaders, they are working collectively to advocate these issues. These issues which are more at the policy level, or at the rights based and the WPS level, and also many other issues. And these are the issues that they picked up that can create lasting systemic changes that we are fighting for. And at the same time, the economic leaders and the CSO leaders and the political leaders who are working at the community level will clubs, they are driving the economic empowerment initiatives at the community level. So this collective action of women at the district level and even at the community level has facilitated a wonderful networking and solidarity among these women, of the project across the various political and cultural divides and they're working collaboratively in advancing the We and the WPS goals. So just wanted to highlight how the collective action of the Wage Sri Lanka initiative is kind of synchronized and working.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed this, but could you just explain what the Will Club stands for, the WILL?
Nisha, do you want to take that?
Sure. So we named it as Will Clubs. It stands for Women in Learning and Leadership. So we have it at the district level and the community level as well. So it's like a brand. It has become a brand among women also. So that's what we are just using as Will Clubs. It's very common for us, but it stands for Women in Learning and Leadership.
One thing is always clear about international development programming, and particularly peace building programming, is that we love acronyms. And one of the things that when I was reviewing the materials for the Wage project, there were so many acronyms. So Will Club is a new one to me. So thank you for explaining that. I'm going to go back to you, Nisha, here. We heard a little bit about some of the activities that you're implementing through the Will Clubs, through market analysis, but could you highlight some more of these activities that you're doing through the Wage Initiative? And can you share some of the results that have been achieved so far?
Sure. So let me start with the Will Club, since we were talking about it. So we have these Will Clubs established both at the district level and the community level. So this is meant to be like a safe space for women to discuss sensitive issues or exchange ideas, or even to network and connect with other stakeholders. And there were they have these sittings so that there were so many innovative ideas for them to have their capacity empowered. So they facilitated with external resource persons coming in. They had their own sessions discussing these issues. So it had become a good platform for them to explore different approaches within themselves. And also I'm very happy to confirm that there is very strong ownership from these women that we see about these Will Clubs. So generally this, when it is a donor-driven international development work, sometimes it's until the project lasts, these mechanisms last. But we see with these Will Clubs, it can go beyond the project, that these women are owning the whole process of, when to convene, what are the topics to be discussed, and how they are running their meetings, and everything is decided by them. And gradually they are introducing measures to make it sustainable also.
So
that
Nisha,
is the
just to discuss that a little bit further, one of the hardest things in our field is that we often build products and tools and groups and networks and communities of practice that are limited to the life cycle of the project. But these World Clubs, you know, like you said, there's a lot of organic engagement, and the participants in the World Clubs feel ownership over the club itself. How did you help, or how did you create a culture that allowed participants to own these World Clubs and really, you know, drive the activities of them?
That is also part of the discussion from the initial stages to make sure, you know, it can't be just like a project-driven activity. And the women, we also like made them show the benefits they get through these platforms, that they get to interact with the different stakeholders and everything. So automatically they are women leaders, and there was a gap for such a platform, I would say. At the district level, so that we made them realize how beneficial it could be for them if they continue it beyond the project, so that gradually they have introduced measures like, you know, how do we bring in food without expecting from the project, or where to select the venue, or, you know, how to have a resource person like you know, who's doing it voluntarily. So they are thinking of those measures to make it, you know, to cut down on the cost, and to make it a process that they can own it and they can continue it. Yeah.
Purna, what about from your perspective?
Right. I think the program has encouraged a lot of participation and involvement of family members and also other community stakeholders through various activities. You know, the training of trainers that we have done, the sessions, you know, there were family members who showed very keen interest to try and kind of join. And when I'm talking about these sessions, which are, you know, the spaces which can be opened up to family members, you know, in the financial literacy training or the business skills training, where family came in to kind of support the women in enterprises. So, you know, it drew a lot of interest from the family members. Also, when we were also going and forming these community level will clubs at the local level, we realized that there was a lot of interest among the community stakeholders, you know, and these are officials from the government bodies, you know, women development officers or women economic officers, or the Grama Niladri, who is a representative of the local government. So they were very keen to know what we are doing, why we are doing it, who we were kind of engaging in. Engaged with them and, you know, explained our initiative, and that kind of sparked an instant interest. And what happened as an outcome of it is that, you know, when we were forming these community level will club, they wanted to become a part of a steering committee. So today we have 16 will clubs that are established at the community level, and the steering committee members are also community stakeholders who are government officials or, you know, from the Chamber of Commerce and things like that. So that automatically leads to a huge and strong buy-in of the community in supporting the women leaders in advancing the, you know, the We agenda or the WPS agenda in the community, and thereby leading to a very positive impact at the community dynamics. So I think that also kind of takes care of the sustainability of the project, because as Nisha was saying, that now, you know, there's such interest at that you know, the networking level, that, you know, women are extremely excited. Community is also very, very interested to take this forward, you know, without any dependence on a project money or resources or, you know, interventions going forward.
So this is super interesting. I'm going to dig into it deeper, but just to clarify for our audience members, that this session is being recorded and will be posted on the DME for Peace Media Gallery later today. So if you are wanting to share this with your colleagues, please just go onto the DME for Peace website and it will be there. So you've both talked about this level of community buy-in, which is, you know, not always guaranteed in a project like this. So beyond that community buy-in, like, what are the most interesting or unexpected results that your activities have generated so far?
Purna, shall I go first?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Sure. So that's a good question. In the sense, we saw that there is increase of visibility of the work these women leaders do. In the sense, they were already like we need to be mindful that they are already existing community leaders within their community, and they got selected to the project. But now we see that the visibility of their work is enhanced, they being engaged with the project, and it's also about the skills they got and also the network they have created. So that is one results, I would say. And also, as Purna was explaining before, there is a lot of male engagement. So we all know that on this women, peace and security agenda, we can't go alone, and we need the support of the male counterparts as well. So there are some unique mechanisms or activities where we engage with male also. So we have created this multi-stakeholder working group that is basically the power holders within the district who can help these women in rolling out the action plans or to access resources. So this group has a lot of men also. So it could be from the government or the private sector or in any other profession. So these members are formed as a working group so that when these women are creating the action plans or proposing something, they can get this support from this working group. And also Purna can elaborate further later how in the training sessions, like since we had this COVID challenge, we had to go virtual, so that a lot of adaptations, so that women had to participate in the activities and the programs, from their households, so that male members were also being part of those programs. So indirectly, we were engaging with those males also, sensitizing them also. So I would like to talk a little bit more on the COVID adaptations. So we were implementing this project during a very difficult period with this COVID pandemic. Sri Lanka was no exception. But our project beneficiaries, middle-aged rural women who had very little IT literacy, they didn't have enough devices, and this was amid this situation, like they had to attend to their kids' online schooling, and there is only one device, and they don't have time. So we had to adjust our program that when women can participate in programs after finishing all their household issues. So, amid all these issues, we were trying to conduct programs, awareness programs, and everything virtually. So that whole experience was like a whole new experience, and we learned a lot implementing that project with these new adaptations. And the biggest success, I would say, is like we were thinking, okay, how difficult it is to bring these women into a virtual platform, but ultimately it was worth it. They got really adapted to these virtual platforms, and now they are ready even to engage for any training programs or even any sessions. Now we have trained them enough that they are very much empowered to participate in virtual platforms. Go ahead, Purna.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Yes, I think the entire COVID period, I think it was during late September till about November, couple of months were very, very challenging. It was not about just delivering the program on ground, but also, adapting a completely in-person, community-based implementation activities, planned activities to a virtual mode. And for that, we had to kind of handhold not just the, eventually not just the women leaders, but also the partners who were implementing the program along with us. So, that took us, we were quite stressed about it to start with, but the results that we got eventually after those 2 months, it was incredible. One was, I would like to highlight, is that, as a part of this wage initiative, we had, distributed tablets to each of the women leaders. And every woman leader who was participating in these virtual trainings now had an access to a gadget, which was so very empowering, because they did not have to kind of compromise on time and kind of the accessibility to a gadget, share it with their family members. So she had a gadget to herself on which she could come on a virtual training forum at her will, at her own convenience. So which was a great and very, very empowering, I would say, a step towards that transition. Second, also, we had to kind of take them through a tech training kind of a thing, how to use a Zoom. We created their Google accounts so that they could receive documents on Gmail. Then Google Sheets were used to conduct the pre-assessment, post-assessment, and they were able to do that. Share their observations or their inputs there. So a lot of these the tech orientation and giving them access to these tools really changed their mindset. And what happened is that eventually they kind of they created these WhatsApp groups, and they shared their experiences, their success stories, their their questions and queries from one another through a completely virtual mode of interaction. I think that's something that they had never experienced before, and that was one of the unexpected and very, very positive results that we had gotten in this intervention.
So it's obviously the name of the initiative, and all the work that you've done is centered around the idea of empowerment. And we have a question from Claudia Milena Adler, who writes, like, how does wage define empowerment? Or it's like sort of, so how do you define empowerment in this Sri Lankan context?
If I may start, sorry,
sure.
Nisha, you want to
Go
go?
ahead.
So, as I was saying earlier, that empowerment under wage is not just one aspect of empowering. It's not just economic empowerment. It's not just making the woman capacitated to be a political leader. It is when we talk about empowerment under wage, it is a holistic empowerment, and it cuts across every aspect of her life. Her life in the households, at the kind of role she plays and the influences she has at the community level. So in order to kind of build that persona of an empowered woman, there are very many significant interventions that this program has designed. So starting from her capacity development on various topics, on WPS topics, on women's economic empowerment topics, on financial literacy, on business skills. So these are the capacity development initiatives that we have done. Then we have also created, linkages between these women leaders and the service providers. And these service providers are, could be a financial service provider or a business service provider, or, someone from the government who is the custodian of the rights and the protection and the safety of the woman. So, all kinds of service provider that make the woman safe, protected, and be empowered. So identify these stakeholders in the community and at the larger local and the national level as well. So once that linkage is also established, we are also creating these collectivizing women through these will clubs. So, and I think one of the magic of empowerment is finding that solidarity group at the local level as well. The fact that the women leaders are now able to reach out to one another through even a phone and a WhatsApp, or even through meeting at the will club level, that solidarity group, that collectivizing is of enormous strength for the woman. So we are creating those spaces also for women to do that. And eventually all of that will culminate into something like, which is an action project, as we call under this project, where they will be able to drive these, the embedded agenda of women's peace and security or gender-based violence that they have identified, or, the women's economic empowerment activities through community action projects or through a pilot that we will design with the financial service delivery mechanism, to financially include this target section that we are working with. Nisha, over to you.
You covered it well, Purna.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Purna. And I'm going to direct the next question towards Nisha to get us started. So this is another question from Ramio. Ramio writes, like, how is the impact of this project, felt in terms of increased women's participation in the governance mechanisms in Sri Lanka, both at the local and national levels, as per the Women's Peace and Security Agenda? Like, has there been an increase in the percentage of women in the administration or other governance mechanisms? Or is it too soon to understand this?
Yeah, the question itself has the answer, I guess. So it's too soon to measure that impact, but we see gradual progress. So as I was explaining before, the overall expectation is that these empowered women and also these activities will lead or enable them to be in a better position to advance the WPS agenda. And we can't go to a national level impact yet because we have it being implemented only in 3 districts, but we see some changes at the district level. That during the COVID pandemic, how these women were reacting to help these communities. We saw, and these women being in certain forums, like there were task force created in the districts to address COVID, and they being part of this task force made a big change, how gender, the sensitive issues, or, how the relief pack should have like a sanitary pad even. Just as an example. So that was possible because these women were represented in those task force. And also how these women created the network really helped in how they delivered the COVID relief to women shelter houses. So we saw little changes during the COVID pandemic, but it's just a start, I would say. Yeah, it's too soon to comment.
Purna, is there anything you'd like to add, or are you happy to move on to the next question?
No, I'm happy to move on.
Perfect. Well, the next question comes from Reem Al-Jabi, my colleague at Search for Common Ground. And Reem has asked, have you provided trainings that include approaches to positive masculinity when engaging men as allies in the project?
If I can take that up, so thus far we have the training of trainers that we have conducted are primarily on financial literacy, business skills, which is hardcore women's economic empowerment issues. And apart from that, I think Search has also kind of trained these women on WPS issues. Now, when we had designed the financial literacy and the business skills courses, we had very, very consciously integrated, after each session, which are little technical, because we were kind of training these women leaders on how to write a business plan, or how to register for their business, and what are these available service providers in the locality where they can get financial support for their businesses, and debt cycles. So these are very technical courses that we had kind of embedded towards women's participation in economic activities. But every session led to a home assignment. And the intent of the home assignment was to actually involve the family members who are typically spouses or other male members who also are involved with the women's enterprises. So, so the reason why we kind of embedded those assignments, and then also it was successfully carried out in enabling participation of male engagement through these home assignments, through the interactions that women had on these courses with their family members, and then it was kind of applied to their own businesses and enterprises, or family enterprises, so to speak. So the reason was that because we know gender-based violence to be a big barrier for women to enter into economic activities or livelihoods, or enterprises as business women. So the design was such that we could initiate male engagement. But during the course of the project, after we had done the financial literacy and the business skills training, it had come up from among the women leaders themselves that there is more. I think they expressed that male engagement or having a gender dialogue at the community level or the household level was also a big need. So we are currently in the process of designing a women's economic empowerment workshop, which would be a 2-day module to take the women leaders through those hardcore topics of male engagement strategy, having a gender dialogue at the household level, having male as champions to support women in enterprises or even in their various roles that they undertake as a part of the society, so to speak. So we are currently in the process of doing that. Nisha, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Just to add, as I mentioned before, like also engaging with power holders or the male champions at the district level had been like really useful, because during the COVID, we saw that how the whole public sector was more focusing on the COVID response, and a lot of, even though there was increase of domestic violence and gender-based violence, the public sector was totally ignoring those complaints and those victims because they had to focus on COVID. So that through this male engagement that we engage with this multi-stakeholder working group members, we try to create more awareness, to see that even the service providers are, having this knowledge related to these barriers related to WPS agenda.
Great, thank you, Nisha and Purna. So we are 2 minutes away from ending today's webinar, and we have had such great audience engagement that we're probably not going to get to the last few comments. So I want to wrap up with this question. In 60 seconds or less, how would you suggest that similar programs apply some of the lessons that you have learned through your current work in Sri Lanka? Maybe we can start with you, Purna.
Well, in my opinion, I think to make programs like this successful, it is absolutely essential to address the multifaceted issues, related to skills, finances, political and legal issues, all of those issues that hold women back, from being empowered. So that the holistic approach is extremely important. The other thing that came up very, very strongly in our program is the male engagement that we keep talking about. The male engagement, community involvement have proved in our program to be great strategies to mitigate risks related to gender-based violence and in ensuring support to women in her journey to empowerment. So that is another, and the community ownership of the intervention, I think that we have been able to establish through these village will clubs, having them as the steering committee members. This is absolutely, great for seamless project implementation, because, there's never going to be a question as to why we are implementing these programs, for who, and how is it going to impact the community. It will also eventually ensure sustainability and ownership. So these are the three things that I think are absolutely essential, to integrate.
Great, thank you, Purna. And Nisha?
Just to add in very shortly, in the sense, it takes a lot of empathy, understanding, and meaningful conversations with the beneficiaries also, in the sense we know these issues, there are so many researchers done to say these are the barriers they are related to WPS, and there could be so many cross-cutting issues that is that identified to be common challenges to these women. But also we realized, when we are implementing this project in these 3 districts, there were unique problems identified to a particular location. that even the other women got to know through some exchange tours and some networking activities. So that, it takes a lot of meaningful conversations and understanding, working with these beneficiaries and the other stakeholders to understand those unique issues also, to address it within the project or beyond it. Thank you.
Great. Nisha and Purna, I think those are great remarks just to end on. I think one of the things that I take away from this conversation is this idea of integration. The women's peace and security agenda or women's economic empowerment can't be moved forward, by singular actors. This is a common challenge, a shared problem, which requires an integrated and shared solution. So one of the things I'm going to promote right now is on our Connexus platform. We are developing this new thematic action area around this issue to increase coordination and collaboration across sectors. Connexus is free to join. Anybody can join around the world from any sector. And you are members of the audience. You can sign up right now with the link. And we have some exciting news coming on Connexus in the next 2 weeks. So I would encourage you to build your profile, and let's engage in better collaboration and knowledge sharing, not sort of tied to our organizations, but across sectors and across issue areas. I just want to take this opportunity as well to thank Nisha and Purna again for such a great discussion. I'm really impressed by the work that you've been doing in Sri Lanka, and keen to learn more. And I know that over the next couple of months, we'll be sharing more information about wage initiatives in other countries, and we'll be sure to keep you in the loop. And thank you to our audience for the first webinar of 2022. You don't have that digital fatigue. There were so many great questions, such great engagement. I really appreciated sort of your inputs and contributions today. And like I said before, it's a pleasure to facilitate these discussions. So thank you, everybody. And thanks again to our guests, Nisha and Purna. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll be back soon with another edition of the Thursday Talks. Maybe on a different platform. Let's see. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you, Nisha.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.